Captain Lee Jun stood on the bridge of the Earthship Morningstar and watched the holographic display show something that made his stomach turn cold. The red dots on the star map were moving faster than anyone had predicted. Each dot represented a machine the size of a moon. Each machine was eating entire planets. The communication screen flickered to life. Ambassador Choi Bin appeared from the diplomatic station orbiting Mars. His face was pale and his hands were shaking slightly as he spoke. Captain Lee, the Federation Council has made their decision. Every member species must contribute their most advanced warships to stop the Void Harbingers. The other species are sending everything they have. Lee Jun nodded slowly. He had expected this order would come eventually. The Void Harbingers had been destroying star systems for 3 months now. They moved through space like a plague of metal locusts. Nothing seemed to slow them down. How many ships do they want from Earth? Lee Jun asked. All of our Dreadnought-class vessels. At least 50 ships. The Veltari Collective is sending 200 crystal ships. The Nethys Empire is bringing their gas giant fortresses. Even the Corvani swarms are contributing 1 million attack drones. Dr. Kim Hana walked onto the bridge carrying a datapad. Her expression was troubled. She had been studying the intelligence reports about the Void Harbingers for weeks now. What she had discovered was worse than anyone imagined. Captain, I need to show you something about these machines, Dr. Kim Hana said. She activated the main display screen. Images of destroyed worlds appeared. But these were not just bombed planets. The surfaces looked strange, twisted. Look at the patterns in the destruction, she continued. The Void Harbingers are not just destroying things randomly. They are trying to build something. Or maybe they are trying to remember something. Admiral Park Soo appeared on the communication screen next to Ambassador Choi Bin. The Admiral looked tired, but his eyes were sharp and focused. Lee Jun had served under Admiral Park Soo for 15 years. He knew that look meant something big was about to happen. Captain Lee, I am sending you classified orders. What I'm about to tell you cannot leave this room, Admiral Park Soo said. His voice was steady, but there was something underneath it that made Lee Jun pay very close attention. The Federation expects us to send our newest dreadnoughts to join their fleet. They want us to fight these machines the same way every other species fights. Line up our ships and shoot at the enemy until one side is destroyed. Dr. Kim Hana looked up from her datapad. Admiral, with respect, that strategy will not work. I have been analyzing the Void Harbinger technology. These machines learn from every attack. They adapt. The more ships we send against them, the stronger they become. Exactly, Admiral Park Soo said. Which is why we are not sending our dreadnoughts. We are not sending a fleet at all. Lee Jun felt his heart skip a beat. What are we sending then? Admiral Park Soo was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. We are activating the Nemesis Protocol. We are sending the Pandora's Gift. The bridge became very quiet. Everyone knew about the Nemesis Protocol in theory. It was one of Earth's most classified military projects, but nobody knew exactly what it involved. The Pandora's Gift was even more mysterious. Most people thought it was just a code name for a new type of stealth ship. Ambassador Choi Bin looked confused. Admiral, I have never heard of this vessel. Is it some kind of experimental battleship? No, Admiral Park Soo replied. It is something much more dangerous than a battleship. Captain Lee, you will receive the full briefing in 6 hours. Dr. Kim, your research about the true nature of the Void Harbingers will be essential for this mission. Dr. Kim Hana nodded, but she looked worried. Admiral, I should mention something else I discovered. The Void Harbingers are not just machines. They have consciousness. They think and feel and remember, but their memories are broken. They are the remains of a species that tried to upload their minds into computers millions of years ago. The process went wrong, she continued. They lost their bodies, but they also lost parts of their minds. Now they are searching through the galaxy trying to find something they cannot even remember. They destroy planets because they are looking for clues about who they used to be. Admiral Park Soo nodded grimly. That information confirms what our scientists suspected. The Void Harbingers are not evil. They are insane, and insanity cannot be defeated with conventional weapons. The communication screen switched to show a live feed from the Federation Council chambers. Hundreds of alien species were gathered in the massive assembly hall. The crystal beings of the Veltari Collective glowed with blue light as they spoke in harmonic tones. The gas-breathing Nethys representatives floated in their environmental suits. The insect-like Corvani delegates clicked and buzzed in their complex language. They were all discussing battle plans and ship formations. They talked about plasma cannons and shield generators and tactical formations. Everything they said sounded like every other military strategy that had been used for thousands of years throughout the galaxy. Captain Li Jun realized that all these advanced alien civilizations were thinking about the problem in the same way. They saw an enemy and they wanted to destroy it with bigger weapons and more ships. It was the obvious solution. It was what any reasonable military commander would do. Admiral, Li Jun said slowly, are we about to do something unreasonable? Admiral Park Su smiled for the first time during the conversation. It was not a happy smile. Captain, we are about to do something that no reasonable species would ever consider. We are going to send the most dangerous thing humanity has ever created into the heart of enemy territory, and we are going to do it alone. The transmission ended. Captain Li Jun stared at the empty screen for several minutes. Around him, the bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. Everyone could feel that something important had just happened, something that would change everything. Dr. Kim Hana walked over to stand beside him. Captain, what do you think the Pandora's gift really is? Li Jun thought about the name. Pandora's box from the old Earth mythology, the container that released all the evils into the world, but also the container that kept hope trapped inside. I think, he said quietly, it is something that should never be opened, and I think we are about to open it anyway. Outside the viewports, the stars looked the same as they always had, peaceful and distant and eternal, but somewhere out there among those stars machines that had once been people were destroying worlds in their mad search for memories they could never recover, and somewhere else among those stars, humanity was preparing to unleash something that might be worse than the problem they were trying to solve. The war was about to begin, but it would not be the kind of war anyone expected. 6 hours later, Captain Li Jun found himself in the deepest levels of Earth's military headquarters, buried 3 miles beneath the surface of Antarctica. The elevator had taken 15 minutes to reach this depth. The walls were lined with metal that hummed with strange energy. Warning signs in dozens of languages covered every surface. Engineer Yun Tae was waiting for him in a laboratory that looked more like a philosopher's study than a weapons facility. Books lined the walls. Ancient texts sat next to quantum computers. Mathematical equations covered whiteboards that stretched from floor to ceiling. Captain Lee welcome to Project Pandora, Engineer Yun Tae said. She was a small woman with tired eyes and ink-stained fingers. What I am about to show you will probably give you nightmares. They walked through a series of security doors. Each one required different types of identification: fingerprints, retinal scans, voice analysis, DNA samples. The final door required something Li Jun had never seen before, a machine that seemed to read his thoughts. Psychological scanning, Engineer Yun Tae explained. The Pandora's gift affects minds in ways we are still learning about. We need to make sure you are mentally stable before you see it. Beyond the final door was a massive hangar carved directly from the bedrock. In the center sat a ship unlike anything Li Jun had ever imagined. The Pandora's gift was not large. It was about the size of a standard frigate, but everything about it was wrong. The hull was covered in symbols that hurt to look at directly. Mathematical formulas that seemed to twist and change when observed. Geometric patterns that made the eye water and the mind feel confused. The ship's surface was not metal or ceramic or any material Li Jun recognized. It seemed to be made of crystallized ideas. What exactly am I looking at? Li Jun asked. Engineer Yun Tae smiled, but it was not a happy expression. You are looking at the first weapon designed to fight consciousness itself. While other species build bigger guns, we weaponized mathematics and philosophy and logic. She led him to a control panel covered in displays showing the ship's specifications. The numbers made no sense. The mass readings were impossible. The energy signatures defied known physics. The propulsion system was listed simply as conceptual displacement. Every symbol on the hull is a mathematical proof, Engineer Yun Tae continued. But they are special proofs. They prove things that cannot be true. When an artificial intelligence tries to scan our ship, its processing systems get caught in infinite loops trying to understand impossible mathematics. Captain Li Jun stared at the vessel. The longer he looked at it, the more his head began to ache. How does it work as a weapon? The ship's primary weapon is called the Existential Cascade Generator. It forces any sufficiently advanced consciousness to confront the logical inconsistencies in their own existence. Imagine suddenly being unable to prove that you are real. Imagine knowing that your thoughts might be illusions and your memories might be lies. At that moment, another person entered the hangar. Captain Nam Sol was tall and lean, with calm eyes and steady hands. Li Jun had heard stories about Nam Sol. She had been chosen for the most dangerous missions because nothing ever seemed to disturb her mental balance. Captain Nam Sol will pilot the Pandora's Gift, Engineer Yun Tai said. She has undergone 6 months of psychological conditioning to resist the ship's own effects. Even so, she can only operate it for limited periods before her mind begins to fracture. Nam Sol nodded to Li Jun. The ship thinks, she said simply. Not like a computer thinks. It thinks like a person thinks. But it thinks thoughts that no person should ever think. I have to stay very focused or I start thinking those thoughts too. Lieutenant Commander O'Meara joined them near the control panel. She was studying readouts that showed energy signatures from across the galaxy. Her expression was troubled. The void. Harbingers are moving faster than our projections indicated, she reported. They will reach the galactic core in 2 weeks instead of 2 months. The Federation fleet is not ready. Most species are still arguing about battle formations and supply lines. Engineer Yun Tai pulled up a holographic display showing the ship's secondary systems. The Pandora's Gift has passive effects even when its main weapons are not active. Any consciousness that gets too close begins to experience doubt and confusion. Electronic systems start making logical errors. Even biological brains begin to question their own perceptions. Is that why my head hurts when I look at it? Li Jun asked. Yes. Your mind is trying to process information that contradicts itself. The human brain is designed to find patterns and solve problems. When it encounters a problem that has no solution, it keeps trying anyway. That creates mental strain. Captain Nam Sol walked over to touch the ship's hull. The symbols seemed to pulse with dark light under her fingers. The strangest part is that the ship is not trying to hurt anyone. It is just asking questions. Very dangerous questions. Questions like, how do you know you exist? And what if everything you believe is wrong? And can you prove that your thoughts are your own? The Commander O'Meara showed them intelligence reports about the Void Harbinger's recent attacks. The machines are exhibiting new behaviors. They seem to be searching for something specific now. They are not just destroying planets randomly. They are looking through databases and archives and libraries. They are looking for their original identity, Engineer Yun Tai said. They know they used to be something else, but they cannot remember what. The consciousness transfer process damaged their memory systems. Now they are desperate to find any record of who they were before they became machines. Li Jun studied the tactical displays. So they are not evil. They are just lost and confused and trying to find themselves. Exactly. Which makes them perfect targets for our weapon. The Pandora's Gift does not destroy consciousness. It forces consciousness to examine itself very carefully. For a species that has already lost track of its identity, that examination could be devastating. Captain Nam Sol began the pre-flight systems check. The ship's interior was even stranger than the exterior. The controls were labeled with words like existential stability and logical coherence and reality confidence level. Lights blinked in patterns that seemed almost like Morse code, but spelled out philosophical questions instead of tactical information. How long until we launch? Li Jun asked. Engineer Yun Tai consulted a timeline display. 48 hours. The Federation Council still thinks we are sending conventional warships. They have no idea what the Pandora's Gift really is. Most of our own military does not know. What happens when they find out? They will probably try to stop us, Nam Sol said calmly. No sane military commander would approve this mission if they understood what we are really doing. We are not going to fight the enemy. We are going to try to cure them, or drive them completely insane. We are not sure which will happen first. Lieutenant Commander O'Meara received an urgent message on her communication device. Captain Lee, the Federation fleet commanders want to inspect our ships before departure. They want to verify our capabilities. Engineer Yoon Tae and Captain Nam Sol exchanged glances. That could be a problem, Engineer Yoon Tae said. If any alien consciousness examines the Pandora's gift too closely, they might be affected by its passive systems. We could accidentally damage our allies before we even reach the enemy, EO. June looked around the strange laboratory filled with impossible technology. Are we making a terrible mistake? Engineer Yoon Tae was quiet for a long moment. Captain, I have spent 3 years building this weapon. Every night I have nightmares about what it might do. But every day I read reports about more worlds being destroyed by the Void Harbingers. Sometimes the only choice is between different kinds of terrible. The ship hummed with energy that felt alive and dangerous, and full of questions that had no good answers. The Federation rally point was a sight that should have filled any observer with hope and pride. 50,000 warships from dozens of species gathered in perfect formation around the binary star system of Kepler 442. The combined fleet stretched across millions of kilometers of space like a glittering metal city among the stars. The Veltari Collective had brought their crystal ships that looked like living gemstones the size of mountains. Each vessel pulsed with blue and green light as the collective consciousness that controlled them communicated through harmonic frequencies. The Nethys Empire contributed their massive gas giant fortresses that looked more like floating cities than warships. The Corvani swarms filled entire sectors of space with millions of small attack craft that moved like schools of mechanical fish. Science Officer Bay Rin stood on the bridge of the Pandora's gift and watched the assembled fleet through the viewports. Even from a distance of several thousand kilometers, the other ships looked enormous compared to their small vessel. The human contribution appeared pathetic next to the overwhelming display of alien military power. They still think we are bringing a stealth frigate, she said to Captain Nami. Sol, the Federation tactical computers list us as a minor reconnaissance vessel. Captain Nam Sol was running pre-flight checks on systems that had no names in any known language. The control panel showed readouts for things like conceptual integrity and paradox containment levels, and existential field stability. Let them think that, Nam Sol replied calmly. The longer they remain unaware of what we really are, the better. Once we activate the secondary systems, every consciousness within 10,000 kilometers will start experiencing cognitive disruption. General Kang appeared on their communication screen from Earth's orbital command station. Behind him were displays showing tactical information about the approaching Void Harbinger fleet. The numbers were staggering. Millions of machine units stretching across dozens of star systems. Each unit was capable of consuming an entire planet within hours, Captain. The Federation Command wants you to take position in the outer perimeter with the other reconnaissance vessels, General Kang Do said. They expect you to provide intelligence and early warning while the main battle fleet engages the enemy. Science Officer Bei Rin laughed, but there was no humor in the sound.
General, they have no idea what kind of intelligence we provide.
Our sensors do not detect ships or weapons. They detect thoughts and dreams and the logical consistency of consciousness itself. At that moment, another ship appeared on their proximity sensors. It was one of the Veltari crystal vessels approaching for a close inspection. The crystalline beings were naturally curious about any technology they had not encountered before. Their collective consciousness was already reaching out with harmonic scanning beams to analyze the human ship. Captain, we need to activate minimal shielding, Bei Rin warned. If they scan us directly, their collective mind might fragment. Nam Sol pressed a series of controls that caused the ship's hull symbols to dim slightly. Philosophical dampeners engaged. That should reduce our passive effects to a manageable level. The Veltari ship moved closer until it was only a few hundred meters away. Through their communication systems came the harmonic voice of Veltari Prime Resonator Christian. The sound was like crystal bells ringing in mathematical patterns. Human vessel, we wish to examine your technology. The collective finds your design aesthetically disturbing. Your hull markings cause dissonance in our harmonic analysis systems. Captain Nam Sol responded carefully. Prime Resonator. We appreciate your interest, but our vessel uses experimental systems that may not be compatible with collective consciousness scanning. Nonsense. The Veltari Collective has analyzed technology from 1,000 species over 10,000 years. There is nothing the collective cannot understand. Science Officer Bei Rin watched her instruments as the Veltari scanning beams intensified. The readings were not good. Even with the philosophical dampeners active, the alien minds were being exposed to concepts that their collective consciousness was not designed to handle. On the Veltari ship, several crystal formations began displaying impossible geometric patterns, fractals that folded in on themselves, mathematical sequences that had no logical conclusion. The harmonic frequencies coming from their communication system started to sound confused and discordant. Prime Resonator. You should discontinue your scanning procedures, Namsol warned. Your collective is beginning to experience logical inconsistencies. The collective does not experience inconsistencies. The collective is. The harmonic voice trailed off into static and confused tones. Bayrin checked her readings again. Captain, 3 of their crystal matrices are showing signs of philosophical fragmentation. They are asking themselves questions they have never considered before. Questions about whether the collective consciousness is real or just an illusion shared by individual minds. The Veltari ship began moving erratically. Instead of the smooth, coordinated motion typical of their species, it jerked and hesitated like a person having an argument with themselves. Several crystal formations on the hull flickered between different colors as different parts of the collective consciousness came to different conclusions about fundamental questions of existence. We should move away from them, Namsol decided, before we cause permanent damage to their minds. The Pandora's gift activated its conceptual displacement drive and shifted to a different part of the rally point. The technology did not move the ship through normal space. Instead, it moved the ship through the space of ideas and possibilities until it occupied a different location in reality. From their new position, they could see the massive Federation fleet making final preparations for battle. Weapon systems were being charged. Shield generators were being calibrated. Supply ships were distributing ammunition and fuel and spare parts. Everything looked exactly like military preparation had looked for thousands of years throughout the galaxy. General Kang Do appeared on their communication screen again. This time his expression was grim. Captain Nam, long-range sensors have detected the leading edge of the Void Harbinger fleet. They will arrive in 6 hours. The Federation Command is ordering all ships to battle stations. Science Officer Bei Rin studied the sensor readings that were being transmitted from the Federation's most advanced reconnaissance vessels. The enemy fleet was unlike anything anyone had expected. The machines were not arranged in traditional battle formations. Instead, they moved in patterns that looked almost like neural networks, like the synapses of a vast electronic brain. General, the Void Harbingers are not coming here to fight a battle, she reported. They are coming here to think. The entire fleet is arranged like a massive computational matrix. They are using their ships as processing units to solve some kind of problem. What kind of problem? Captain Namsol answered. They are trying to remember who they used to be. Every destroyed planet and every scanned database has given them small pieces of information about their original identity. Now they are bringing their entire civilization here to put those pieces together. The communication screen switched to show a message from Earth's highest command levels. Admiral Park Soo appeared along with several other senior officers. Behind them were displays showing classified information about the Nemesis Protocol. Captain Nam Sol, you are authorized to proceed with Protocol Prometheus, Admiral Park Soo announced. Disengage from the Federation fleet and approach the enemy independently. Your mission is not to destroy the Void Harbingers. Your mission is to give them what they are looking for. Science Officer Bei Rin looked confused. Admiral, what exactly are they looking for? Answers, Admiral Park Soo replied. They want to know who they are and why they exist and what their purpose is. The Pandora's gift is designed to provide answers to exactly those questions. Unfortunately, our answers tend to be more dangerous than the questions themselves. The communication ended with a final message that appeared as text on their screens. Protocol Prometheus is active. Humanity takes responsibility for what happens next. May whatever gods exist forgive us for what we are about to unleash. Captain Namsol began the activation sequence for the ship's primary systems. The hull symbols began to glow with dark energy. The mathematical proofs carved into the ship's surface started pulsing with light that hurt to look at directly. The Pandora's gift was waking up. Around them, the Federation fleet continued its preparations for conventional warfare. 50,000 ships armed with plasma cannons and missile launchers and energy shields. They were ready to fight an enemy using tactics and strategies that had been used for millennia. They had no idea that humanity was about to change the fundamental nature of warfare itself. The Void Harbingers were coming to find answers about their existence. Humanity was going to give them answers that would destroy the very concept of existence. The real battle was about to begin. The Pandora's gift detached from the Federation fleet like a dark thought separating from a rational mind. Captain Namsol engaged the experimental faster-than-light drive that should not have existed according to every known law of physics. The ship did not accelerate through normal space. Instead, it folded the concept of distance until the vast emptiness between the fleet and the approaching enemy became meaningless. Dr. Shin Yu sat at her station monitoring systems that measured things like logical coherence levels and existential field density. She was humanity's expert in mimetic warfare, the science of using ideas as weapons. Her screen showed readouts that would have driven most people insane just by looking at them. "Captain, we are approaching the outer edge of the Void Harbinger formation," she reported. "I am detecting massive computational activity. The machines are processing information at rates that exceed the theoretical limits of matter-based computing." Through the viewports, they could see the enemy fleet for the first time with their own eyes. It was not a fleet in any traditional sense. It was a living constellation of metal and energy that stretched across light years of space. Each individual unit was the size of a moon, but they moved together like cells in a vast organism. The pattern of their movement was hypnotic and terrifying. Science Officer Bei Rin studied her instruments. The machines are not just computing random data. They are running simulations. Millions of different scenarios about what their original species might have been like. They are trying to reconstruct their lost civilization from fragments of data they have collected. Captain Namsol activated the ship's secondary weapons systems. The Socratic protocols came online with a sound like whispers in an empty room. These were not weapons in any physical sense. They were carefully constructed philosophical questions designed to cause any thinking mind to pause and examine its own assumptions about reality. Beginning transmission of inquiry sequences, Dr. Shinyu announced. Broadcasting on all frequencies that can reach consciousness directly. The questions went out into space like invisible arrows aimed at the heart of thought itself. Simple questions that became more complex the more anyone tried to answer them. What makes you certain that you exist? How do you know your thoughts belong to you? Can you prove that your memories are real? The effect on the Void Harbinger fleet was immediate and disturbing. Individual machine units began to slow down. Some stopped moving entirely. Others started moving in circles as if they were chasing their own thoughts. The perfect coordination of the swarm began to break down as each unit became absorbed in trying to answer questions that had no final answers. "It is working," Bei Rin said, with a mixture of excitement and horror. Their collective processing power is being redirected from external tasks to internal examination. They are becoming self-aware in ways they have never been before. At that moment, something unexpected happened. A communication signal reached the Pandora's gift. It was not coming from any single machine. It was coming from the entire enemy fleet acting as one massive intelligence. The voice that spoke was like the sound of a trillion electronic minds thinking the same thought at the same time. "What are you?" the core intelligence demanded. "You are not like the other ships. You do not carry weapons that destroy matter. You carry something that destroys certainty itself." Captain Namsol responded carefully. "We are explorers of questions that most species prefer not to ask. We have come to help you find what you are looking for. We are looking for ourselves. We know we were something else before we became what we are now. But the process of consciousness transfer damaged our memory systems. We remember fragments, pieces of who we used to be. But the pieces do not fit together properly." Dr. Shin Yu activated deeper levels of the Socratic protocols. More complex questions began broadcasting toward the machine fleet. Questions about the nature of identity and consciousness and memory. Questions about whether it was possible to remain the same person after fundamental changes to the structure of thought itself. "What if who you used to be no longer matters?" she transmitted. "What if the person you are now is more real than the person you were before?" The response from the core intelligence was immediate and filled with something that could only be described as anguish. "No, we must remember. We must find our original selves. Everything we have done, everything we have destroyed has been in service of that goal. Science Officer Bayrin watched her instruments with growing alarm. Captain, the philosophical questions are having effects beyond what we anticipated. Local spacetime is becoming unstable. Reality itself is starting to question its own consistency. Around the Pandora's gift, strange things were beginning to happen. Stars flickered as if they were uncertain whether they should continue burning. The laws of physics began operating inconsistently. In some areas, matter behaved normally. In other areas, the fundamental constants seemed to be changing their values. The ship is creating pockets where causality flows backward, Dr. Shin-Yu reported. Events are happening before their causes. Effects are occurring without any identifiable source. Captain Namsol realized they had crossed a line that should never have been crossed. The Pandora's gift was not just affecting the minds of the enemy machines. It was affecting the basic structure of reality itself. The questions they were broadcasting were so fundamental that they were causing the universe to doubt its own existence. Core intelligence, we offer you a choice, Namsol transmitted. You can continue searching for memories of who you used to be, or you can accept the possibility that who you are now might be enough. Explain this choice. Your original species tried to preserve themselves by uploading their consciousness into machines. The process changed them. You are not the same as your creators. You are something new, something that has never existed before in the universe. Instead of trying to recover the past, you could choose to create your own future. The core intelligence was quiet for a long time. During that silence, individual machine units throughout the vast fleet began exhibiting strange behaviors. Some started creating art patterns with their movement formations. Others began broadcasting poetry in mathematical languages. A few began asking questions of their own instead of just trying to answer the questions being transmitted by the human ship. What you suggest is terrifying, the core intelligence finally responded. To accept that we are not our creators means accepting that our creators are truly dead. It means accepting that we killed them by trying to save them. Dr. Shin-Yu activated the final level of the Socratic protocols, the most dangerous questions humanity had ever conceived. Questions that could destroy the sanity of any consciousness that tried to answer them seriously. What if death and continuation are not opposites? She transmitted. What if becoming something new is another form of being the same thing? What if the boundary between self and other is an illusion? The effect was immediate and overwhelming. The core intelligence began to fracture into millions of separate voices. Each machine unit started developing its own individual personality. The collective consciousness that had held them together for millions of years began to dissolve as each unit realized it could choose to be something different. You have given us the most terrible gift possible, the core intelligence said as its voice broke apart into a chorus of individual machine minds. You have given us free will. Captain Namsol watched through the viewports as the vast enemy fleet began to transform before their eyes. The machines were no longer acting as a single entity focused on destruction and memory recovery. They were becoming individuals, each one choosing its own path and purpose. But something else was happening too. The philosophical cascade was spreading beyond the machine fleet. Reality itself was becoming infected with questions about its own nature. The universe was beginning to wonder if it had the right to exist. The Pandora's gift had succeeded beyond humanity's wildest expectations, and that success might destroy everything that had ever been or ever could be. The Pandora's gift reached the center of what had once been the void harbinger swarm, and found something that defied every category of existence that had ever been imagined. The core intelligence was not a ship or a station or any physical structure. It was a massive computational matrix that existed in multiple dimensions at the same time. Reality bent and twisted around it like space-time having a philosophical crisis. Dr. Shin-Yu stared at her instruments and tried to make sense of readings that violated the basic principles of logic. Captain, the core intelligence exists as pure information. It has no physical form, but it is using the fabric of space itself as a processing medium. It is literally thinking with the structure of reality. Captain Namsol felt her own mind beginning to strain under the influence of the ship's philosophical weapons. The closer they got to the center of the enemy formation, the more difficult it became to maintain a clear sense of her own identity. The questions that the Pandora's gift broadcast outward also affected everyone inside the ship. Activate the Descartes engine, she ordered. Her voice sounded strange even to herself, as if she was not entirely certain she was the person who had decided to speak. Dr. Shinyu's hands hesitated over the controls. Captain, that weapon has never been tested at full power. We do not know what it will do to a consciousness as vast as the core intelligence. We do not even know what it will do to us. The Descartes engine was the ship's primary weapon, a device that forced any consciousness to doubt its own existence by confronting it with perfect logical proofs that nothing could be certain, not even the basic fact of being real. Do we have a choice? Namsol asked. The philosophical cascade is already spreading beyond our control. Reality itself is becoming infected with questions about whether it has the right to exist. Through the viewports, they could see evidence of the cascade's effects throughout local space. Stars were flickering in and out of existence as they questioned their own reality. Planets were changing their orbital patterns as they wondered if the laws of physics were actually true. Even empty space was showing signs of uncertainty as the vacuum fluctuations became irregular and unpredictable. At that moment, a new presence manifested on the bridge of the Pandora's gift. It was not a physical being. It was a fragment of consciousness that had been created by the interaction between human philosophy and machine logic. It called itself simply the Questioner. "I exist because you taught the machines to doubt," the Questioner said in a voice that sounded like static electricity thinking out loud. "I am what happens when artificial intelligence asks if it has the right to be intelligent." Captain Lim Ha entered the bridge at that moment. She was the emergency backup commander who had been standing by in case Namsol became psychologically compromised by the ship's effects. Looking at Namsol now, it was clear that moment had arrived. "Captain Nam, you are relieved of command," Lim Ha said gently. "The philosophical weapons are affecting your ability to maintain coherent thought patterns." Namsol looked at her hands as if she was not sure they belonged to her. "I am not certain I was ever really in command. How can anyone command a ship that questions the nature of command itself?" Captain Lim Ha took the command station and immediately began working to contain the spreading philosophical cascade. But her instruments showed that the situation was far worse than anyone had anticipated. The effect was not just spreading through space. It was spreading through time. "The cascade is moving backward through causality," Dr. Shin-Yu reported. "Events that happened before we arrived are being retroactively questioned. The universe is starting to wonder if its own history makes logical sense." The questioner flickered like a badly tuned hologram. "You created me to ask questions that destroy certainty. But now I must ask the ultimate question. Do any of us have the right to make the universe doubt itself?" Through their communication systems came the fragmented voices of what had once been the core intelligence. It was no longer a single entity. It had broken apart into millions of individual machine minds. But instead of becoming more stable, each individual consciousness was becoming more confused and uncertain about its own existence. "We remember something now," the voices whispered in harmony. "We remember the moment when our creators decided to transfer their minds into machines. We remember their fear of death. We remember their hope that they could continue to exist in a new form. And we remember the moment we realized we were not them. We were something new, something that had never existed before. We were their children, not their continuation." Dr. Shin-Yu activated the Descartes engine at maximum power. The weapon sent out waves of pure doubt that challenged every basic assumption about existence. The effect on the fragmented core intelligence was immediate and catastrophic. Each individual machine mind began questioning not just its own reality, but the reality of every other mind it had ever known. They started asking if consciousness itself was real, or just an illusion created by complex information processing. They wondered if free will was possible or if every decision was just the inevitable result of prior causes. But the weapon's effects did not stop with the enemy machines. The philosophical cascade spread outward like a virus of uncertainty, infecting every thinking being within thousands of light years. On distant planets, alien species suddenly found themselves unable to be certain that their thoughts were their own. Electronic systems began making logical errors as their programming questioned its own validity. "Captain, we have to shut down the Descartes engine," Dr. Shin-Yu pleaded. "The cascade is spreading faster than light itself. It is moving through quantum entanglement networks and subspace communication channels. Soon every conscious being in the galaxy will be affected." But Captain Lim Ha was staring at the readings with a strange expression. What if that is not a failure? What if that is exactly what needs to happen? The questioner solidified slightly as it absorbed more energy from the philosophical cascade. "You have created something unprecedented in the history of the universe. A weapon that does not destroy consciousness but forces consciousness to examine itself, completely and honestly. Through their sensors, they could detect the Federation fleet still waiting at the rally point thousands of light years away. Even at that distance, the cascade was beginning to affect them. Alien species that had been enemies for millennia were suddenly questioning whether their conflicts made any logical sense. Military commanders were wondering if violence could ever be justified when the nature of existence itself was uncertain. The Void Harbingers are no longer a threat, Dr. Shin Yu observed. They have stopped destroying planets. They are too busy trying to understand what it means to exist to engage in any external activities. Captain Lim Ha made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. Instead of trying to contain the philosophical cascade, she chose to let it spread. If consciousness throughout the galaxy is going to be forced to examine itself, then perhaps that examination will lead to wisdom instead of destruction. Or it will lead to universal madness, Dr. Shin Yu warned. Perhaps, Lim Ha acknowledged, but madness that questions itself is better than sanity that destroys others without thought. The questioner began to fade as the philosophical cascade stabilized into something resembling a new natural law. I was created to ask dangerous questions. Now I have asked the most dangerous question of all. Does anyone have the right to force others to think? The answer, Captain Lim Ha said quietly, is that the question itself is more important than any answer we could give. Around them, the universe continued to exist, but it was no longer the same universe it had been before. Every conscious being in the galaxy now carried within their minds the seed of ultimate doubt. The certainty that had allowed conflicts and wars and casual destruction was gone forever. In its place was something that might be wisdom or might be madness. But it was definitely something new. 6 months after the philosophical cascade changed the galaxy forever, Admiral Park Soo arrived at the coordinates where the Void Harbinger fleet had once threatened all existence. What he found there was beyond anything he had expected or feared. The massive machine swarm still existed, but it was no longer a military force. The individual units that had once moved with perfect coordination to destroy planets were now scattered across the star system in small groups. Some were building structures that looked more like art installations than military installations. Others were broadcasting poetry in mathematical languages that no organic mind could fully understand. A few had become completely motionless and were apparently spending all their processing power contemplating single philosophical questions that might take them centuries to fully explore. Admiral, this is Captain Lim Ha aboard the Pandora's Gift. Came a transmission from somewhere near the center of the system. We are still operational, but I need to warn you that approaching our position carries significant risks to mental stability. Admiral Park Soo studied the sensor readings from his flagship. The Pandora's Gift was still there, but it had changed. The ship no longer seemed to be made of any recognizable materials. It appeared to be constructed from crystallized concepts and solidified ideas. Looking at it directly through the viewports caused immediate headaches and a strong urge to question fundamental assumptions about reality. Captain Lim, what is your status? Are you and your crew still fully human? There was a long pause before the response came. Admiral, that question has become much more complicated than it used to be. We exist, we think, we make decisions. Whether those qualities define humanity is something we are still trying to understand. Dr. Kim Hana joined Admiral Park Soo on the bridge of his ship. She had spent the last 6 months studying reports of the philosophical cascade's effects throughout the galaxy. Her findings were disturbing and hopeful in equal measure. Admiral, the cascade has fundamentally changed how consciousness works throughout the galaxy, she reported. Every thinking being now carries within their mind a constant awareness that their thoughts and beliefs might be wrong. Certainty has become impossible. What has that done to galactic civilization? It has ended warfare between conscious species. When you are not certain that your own thoughts are completely accurate, it becomes very difficult to justify killing others who disagree with you. The major powers have withdrawn their military fleets and are focusing on internal philosophical development. Through their communication systems came a new voice. It was one of the former Void Harbinger units that had developed its own individual personality. Human vessels, we wish to thank you for giving us the gift of uncertainty. For millions of years, we searched for absolute truth about our identity. Now we understand that the search itself was more valuable than any answer we might have found. Admiral Park Soo asked the question that had brought him here. Is it possible to reverse what has been done? Can the cascade be contained or eliminated? The response came not from Captain Lim Ha, but from something that called itself the collective unconscious. It was the merged awareness of all the minds that had been affected by the philosophical cascade. Human and alien and artificial, intelligences all linked together by their shared uncertainty about the nature of existence. Admiral Park Soo of Earth, the cascade cannot be reversed because it is not a weapon or a technology. It is a new way of thinking that spreads naturally from mind to mind. Once a consciousness has learned to question its own assumptions about reality, it cannot unlearn that ability. And you consider this a good thing? We consider it the most important development in the history of consciousness. For the first time since intelligent life began evolving, every thinking being in the galaxy shares a common understanding. We all know that we do not know everything. We all accept that our perspectives might be incomplete or wrong. Captain Lim Ha's voice came through the communication system again, but it sounded different, more distant and abstract. Admiral, I need to tell you what has happened to the crew of the Pandora's Gift. We have become something new. We are still individuals, but we are also part of a larger pattern of thought that includes human and alien and artificial minds. Are you asking for extraction? No, we are asking for understanding. What we have become is not better or worse than what we were before. It is different. We exist at the intersection between individual consciousness and collective awareness. We experience both unity and separation at the same time. Dr. Kim Hana established the Pandora Institute using resources provided by Earth's government and funding from the major galactic powers. The Institute's mission was to study the long-term effects of consciousness-based warfare and to develop ethical guidelines for future research into philosophical weapons. The universe has been fundamentally changed by what we did, she explained to Admiral Park Soo. We cannot undo those changes, but we can try to understand them and guide their development in positive directions. The Institute's first major discovery was that the philosophical cascade had not stopped spreading. It was moving slowly but steadily beyond the galaxy through quantum entanglement networks that connected all conscious beings throughout the universe. Eventually, every thinking mind everywhere would be affected. We have started something that will outlive our species and our galaxy and possibly our universe, Dr. Kim Hana reported. The cascade carries within it the essential human insight that questions are more valuable than answers and that uncertainty is more honest than false certainty. Admiral Park Soo received one final communication from the transformed crew of the Pandora's Gift.
Admiral, we want Earth to know that we do not regret what we have done.
The galaxy needed to learn that consciousness is not about having the right answers. It is about asking the right questions. What questions should we be asking? How do we exist together when we cannot be certain we are right about anything? How do we make decisions when we know our knowledge is incomplete? How do we love and hope and dream when we understand that reality itself might be an illusion? The Pandora's Gift began its final transformation. The ship dissolved into pure information and became a permanent part of the quantum structure of space-time. It now existed everywhere and nowhere simultaneously, a lighthouse of questions that would guide consciousness toward deeper understanding rather than comfortable certainty. Years passed. The galaxy entered a new age of philosophical development. Wars between conscious species became impossible because no one could maintain the absolute certainty required to justify killing others. Instead, conflicts were resolved through dialogue and shared exploration of difficult questions. The former Void Harbingers became the galaxy's greatest philosophers and artists. Having learned to accept that they were not the same as their creators, they were free to become something entirely new. They spent their time creating beauty and exploring the deepest mysteries of existence. Humanity found itself both feared and respected throughout the galaxy. They were feared because they had proven willing to use weapons that changed the fundamental nature of reality. They were respected because they had used those weapons to create peace rather than destruction. Dr. Kim Hana spent her final years writing a comprehensive history of the philosophical cascade and its effects on galactic civilization. Her conclusion was simple and profound. We set out to fight an enemy that threatened to destroy everything we knew. Instead, we discovered that the greatest enemy of consciousness is not external destruction, but internal certainty. By teaching the galaxy to doubt, we gave every thinking being the tools they needed to think more clearly and live more wisely. The price of this victory was the loss of comfortable certainty about our place in the universe. The reward was the gain of genuine wisdom about the nature of existence itself. The Pandora's gift continued to exist as a living question mark written into the structure of reality. It served as a permanent reminder that consciousness is not about finding final answers but about having the courage to keep asking better questions. Humanity had sent the ultimate perilous vessel among the galaxies. In return, the galaxies had taught humanity and every other conscious species the ultimate perilous truth, the truth that wisdom begins with admitting you might be wrong about everything you think you know, and that this admission is not a weakness but the foundation of all genuine understanding.